Hey y'all, Southern Style Gaming here, and in this one I'm going to do kind of an inverse, more of an awkward inverse, I guess, to last week's video, which was the top 5 Harry Potter theories. I can't actually think of, like, top 5 least favorite Harry Potter theories. Like, there's a couple out there that I don't really like, the Dumbledore making Fawkes into a Horcrux theory. I'm not really fond of that one. Super Carlin Brothers. They're my favorite channel on YouTube, but that's like, if I had to pick one video of theirs I don't like, it's that one. Even though it's technically a very good video and it explains a lot, I just don't like the, I guess I don't like the implications of it. It's not anything they did, it's just like what the video would ultimately mean. However, another one I don't like, and probably the least technically favorite one of mine, would be the, Ron is a time-traveling Dumbledore theory. Like, I just don't think it's, all that plausible, even though it has somehow persisted over the years. Like, it's pretty much debunked just by the Deathly Hallows revealing that Dumbledore had his own childhood. Like, I don't get why this is still a thing. Like, maybe by movie standards, but oh well. Either way. So instead of top 5 least favorite Harry Potter theories, I'm going to do my top 5 least favorite Harry Potter opinions. Now, I know the 5 and 4 are probably not necessarily unpopular. They're just not really, like, across the board opinions. I'll say they're polarizing. They're polarizing opinions. Not necessarily unpopular, but they do get enough pushback when you speak out about them that I do feel like they deserve a spot on this list. So with that said, let's get started. So my number 5 unpopular opinion has to be the opinion that Hermione and Ron were a bad couple. Now, it's kind of funny that this opinion basically goes against the actual story. I mean, even the author herself has said that she thought that Hermione and Ron were a bad pairing, and I disagree. I actually thought they were a great pairing. I mean, not just because that's what the story wanted to happen, and it was very clear from early on that that's what the story wanted to happen, but just because I genuinely like their dynamic. I think it's unusual. It's definitely an unorthodox pairing, but I think that's part of what I like about it. Like, every couple is always this, sunshine and rainbows, never argue type thing. These two, they will argue. They will fight. Ron is bullheaded and Hermione is a know-it-all. They are going to get into spats, but at the end of the day, it's kind of what makes them a special couple. Like, honestly, they remind me a lot of my own parents. Like, my parents, they were both pretty bullheaded, and, they would kind of have a lot of fun just picking at each other. They always kind of had fun at each other's expense with the acknowledgement that, they were doing this to one another. It wasn't like, they'd get all offended if the other person was doing it to them. Like, they had a lot of fun with it. It's something that I kind of like to call like a Tom and Jerry romance dynamic. Like, I think it's one of those things where you look at them and they're like, man, they're in so much conflict. You'd think they hate each other. But at the end of the day, if one did not have the other, they would be miserable. And I honestly think part of the dynamic that a lot of people sort of miss is that Hermione is a know-it-all. Let's not get past this. Hermione is a know-it-all. And Ron's bullheadedness makes him basically the only person in the story who's actually willing to stand up to her about basically anything. Like, he's the only one willing to call her out, because everyone else, I don't want to say they're scared of her, but they just don't want to argue with her. Like, he is the only one that'll say, hey, maybe not this road. And of course, Hermione sort of has her own brand of bullheadedness. She can be very stubborn at times, but at the end of the day, they do genuinely love each other. I don't think it's disrespect, as so many people seem to think it is. Obviously there are times where they take it a little too far. Hermione in the third book with her constantly defending Crookshanks when, honestly, every single thing said that Crookshanks ate Scabbers, and all she really had to do was apologize. Like, it wasn't even like Ron was saying, hey, you better bring my rat back. You know, it's like she should have kept a closer eye on Crookshanks. By the same token, Ron really should have kept his jealousy in check in the Goblet of Fire when Hermione and Victor went to the Yule Ball. I think that was basically the inverse. You know, like, it was Ron's turn to kind of be a douchebag. Like, they had their moments where they went too far, but at the end of the day, I think they were a great couple. Now, number 4 is another opinion about a particular person, and this one is the other way. Most people love him. I don't. Snape. Seriously. Snape is an incel. Like, I do not use this word lightly. In fact, I don't even like the word incel, but there's, like, no other word you can really use to describe Snape. It's like, he's a good guy only because it benefits him. Let's be real here. He's only a good guy because Voldemort killed the only girl he ever loved. Like, his reasons for being a part of the Order, for serving Dumbledore, his only reasons for any of this are entirely self-serving. It's so that he can clear his own guilty conscience. Because he knows deep down he is kind of the one responsible for Lily's death. Because he reported the prophecy. Now, I'm not going to blame him for that. I honestly could. But, like, I'm not going to. I'm not going to go there. What I will say is that he was a horrible teacher. Like, I hear so many people giving the excuse that, oh, it was tough love and this, that, and the other. No, it wasn't. It was borderline abuse. His treatment of Neville was unforgivable. Indefensible. Like, it's disgusting how he treated this kid. Like, he threatened to kill his pet just for spite. Like, this kid that probably needed help in this subject, because he was so bad at it. But Snape's just like, nah, I'm gonna murder your toad instead. And then Neville and Hermione get in trouble because he got sad he wasn't allowed to murder the toad. Like, I'm sorry, but how sad do you have to be to get someone in trouble for not allowing you to murder probably their only friend in their life at that point? Like, I do not doubt that Trevor was the closest thing Neville had to a friend, other than possibly Harry. And that's a big possibly. Like, I think at this point, Neville was still probably pretty unfamiliar with Harry as a friend. Like, yeah, Harry, dropped him a line every now and then, but it wasn't like an everyday thing. They weren't, they weren't talking every day. Like, and Snape is just so horrible to this guy. And that's not to mention how he treats everyone else. The only difference is Harry won't put up with his crap. Harry actually kind of fights back on him. And Snape hates it. He's in fact, another thing I'll point out, the way he treated Hermione in Goblet of Fire with the whole teeth thing, that's awful. I'm sorry, but that would be like in the Muggle world, a teacher laughing at a student he didn't like because he got a tooth knocked out. Like, how quickly would that teacher be getting fired? Let's just be real here. And then on top of all of that, people make the excuse that Snape hated James, so therefore he had some sort of twisted right to hate Harry. First of all, Snape hating James was kind of petty. I mean, James is played out to be this bully, and I mean, yeah, he kind of was, but if you're going to call James a bully, you also have to call Fred and George bullies. And I mean, there's an argument to be made there. Maybe Fred and George were bullies. But here's the thing. James did not like Snape because Snape did not like James. Like, let's be honest, this whole thing was established on the train. to Hogwarts. Like, Snape and James are just kind of taking shots at each other. It's not a one-sided ordeal. Like, yeah, there was a rivalry here. Dumbledore himself even describes it as something like Harry and Draco. And yeah, it was significantly nastier. I'm not gonna lie. James got out of line. But, Snape is carrying this into his 30s. And still hating the only remnant of the girl he loved because the kid looks like his high school bully. I'm sorry, but when you say it out loud, to me, that sounds ludicrous. I just don't get why people defend Snape. I really don't. And I understand, there are a lot of people on my side of this as well. Like, there are a lot of people who despise Snape with all of their being. But I still think there are more people that defend him than there are that disdain him. So, yeah, that's why this is number 4. So, my number 3 unpopular opinion is that Fred and George, not Hermione, were the greatest wizards of their generation. Now, I've heard so many people say that Hermione is like the Dumbledore of her generation. I disagree with this so heavily. And the reason why I say that is because Hermione was a very proficient witch. She was very good at magic. She could perfect the magic that she knew very well. But she was like the perfect math student of witches. Like, you put something in front of her, she'll figure it out. Probably to perfection. The problem is that Fred and George over here are just inventing new magic. And nobody's paying any attention to it because they're doing it for laughs. Like, I'm sorry, but Fred and George were absolutely brilliant wizards. Like, they were gifted and they were creative. But, like, nobody really cared because they were doing it for, like, joke magic stuff. Like, I'm sorry, I think they were absolutely outstanding wizards and that nobody gives them the credit they deserve because of what they used their magic for. Ironically, I actually think Dumbledore would appreciate it. In fact, who knows, maybe he had like a secret sort of, thing with Fred and George, like slipping him ideas here and there, like, hey, try this out, Like, I would honestly love, like, that's, you know what, that's one of my headcanons now. Dumbledore was secretly colluding with Fred and George to come up with new, like, joke wizard gags. Like, that's absolutely a headcanon of mine now. But, at the end of the day, while I understand people saying that Hermione is the brightest witch of her age, and she was probably the best student of her time, I do think Fred and George were the greatest wizards of their generation, not Hermione Granger. Now, my number 2 unpopular opinion actually has something to do with one of the book versus movie things. So, one of the changes they made from the book to the movie is that the Elder Wand in the books, Harry places it back in Dumbledore's tomb. So that way, whenever Harry dies, the power of the wand dies. And, as long as Harry dies a natural death, like, nothing else is ever going to happen to the wand. In the movies, Harry just straight up takes the Elder Wand, breaks it in half, and throws it down a canyon. And you know what? I think that was the better solution. Like, I get it. I get that people get, like, this kind of sentimentality about the Elder Wand. Like, yeah, it's one of the Deathly Hallows. There's this sort of aura around it. And a lot of people don't like the fact that Harry just, straight up yeets it into a river or whatever. Well, not even a river, just a canyon. I'm assuming there's water running down there. But, I don't know, maybe that's just me. But, like, so many people seem to have an issue with this. And I'm just telling myself, why? Why would you possibly have an issue with that? Like, here's the thing. Especially if you take the book's version of the final battle. There are probably dozens, if not hundreds of people watching, standing there, in the Great Hall during Voldemort and Harry's final showdown. They all hear Harry talking about the Elder Wand. And you know what? I bet you anything not all of them are able to keep their mouth shut. I'll bet you they go out of that Great Hall and they let it slip to someone else out of excitement that Harry Potter had the Elder Wand. And that, it changed all these hands. Ultimately, it was Dumbledore's at some point. It's very possible. At some point, some crackpot wizard comes along, ends up, around Dumbledore's tomb somehow, and gets the wand. Like, I'm sorry, I know that's like a 0.001% chance of anything like that ever happening because, obviously Hogwarts security and, all the steps you'd have to trace to get to Dumbledore's tomb. But you know what's lower than a 0.001% chance of that happening? A 0% chance of that happening, which is exactly what would be the case if Harry just breaks the wand and throws it into a river or a canyon or whatever's down there below that bridge that he's standing on. Like, yeah, he broke the Elder Wand. That was probably the best thing for him to do. And people have a problem with that? Why? I really don't understand it. Like, in terms of, risk calculation, Harry made the right decision in the movies, and I will die on that hill. Now, my number one unpopular Harry Potter opinion is one that I think is genuinely, death threat level unpopular. I wouldn't be surprised if I got some in the comments, but I just want to point this out before I say it. I mean this strictly as a couple, not as parents, strictly as a couple, a romantic couple. I think the Dursleys, Vernon and Petunia Dursley, are one of the best in the series, and I'd even go as far as to say they are better than Molly and Arthur Weasley. Now, let me explain this specific comparison. So, for one, let's look at Molly and Arthur's relationship. Now, look, are they great parents? Yes, absolutely. Are they a good couple? Yeah, I'd say they're a good couple. Obviously, they had a loving home because, their children are great, but, they honestly seem like they're always at odds with each other about something. Molly seems to kind of almost disregard her husband's interest in Muggle stuff. She, looks down on it. And that's always kind of bothered me. You married the guy, and you're looking down on his biggest hobby. I know the books might kind of over-exaggerate it, but that's just what it seems like to me. And in return, Arthur is hiding that stuff from her. Actively hiding it from her. It just seems so strange to me that, the biggest thing about him, she looks down on it, and he feels the need to hide it. So, that does to me kind of scream at least a small level of dysfunction. Vernon and Petunia, they're not really dysfunctional in any way. They're actually a really great couple when you look at it objectively. They have respect for each other, they clearly love each other. Let's take two big examples. One where Petunia is showing respect for Vernon, and one where the inverse is true. So, in the Chamber of Secrets, Vernon, he's got this huge deal with this other company. I can't remember the exact name or whatever. I know the dude's name is Mr. Mason. But anyway, she's doing all this work, to help him sort of seal this deal. She's going through all this trouble. And, that shows that she has, a huge amount of respect and admiration for Vernon. On the other hand, Vernon also shows that he cares a lot about Petunia. Because in the Order of the Phoenix, when all this stuff comes out about Voldemort coming back, Vernon is basically dead set on kicking Harry out of the house. He is ready to do it, and Petunia's kind of even on his side. And then she gets the letter from Dumbledore. And all of a sudden, like, obviously you don't know it's a letter from Dumbledore when it happens, but at the end of the book it's revealed to be from him. But when it happens, she's just like, look, I can't explain. Harry has to stay. And Vernon, as unhappy as he is with the circumstances, allows it. Now, like I said, they're terrible parents. Like, Harry and Dudley both suffer in their own distinct brand. But, like Harry, he's so, he's neglected. He's nigh on abused. But at the same time, Dudley is just so, he's so pampered and just, in general, he's just given such a pass on everything that when it comes to him being an adult, I just, I don't know how well he could make it. Like, according to JK, he has kids. So, I mean, I guess he made it as an adult. But, obviously that's actually shocking to me. Because they're terrible as parents. But they are an outstanding couple. In fact, I'd argue the only couple better in the entire series is Bill and Fleur. Like, that's it. Bill and Fleur, and then Vernon and Petunia Dursley. I'm serious. I think they actually have that much love, respect, and admiration for one another. And let's not lie. As terrible as they are as people, they're perfect for one another. Like, they are so extraordinarily just normal. They both just have this hatred for things that are out of the ordinary. And they, in that regard, they are absolutely perfect for one another. Like, it's, you have toxic relationships, even in the series, where two people are just terrible people, and that's why it's toxic. I think we see that with, with, like, Voldemort and Bellatrix. You kind of see that there. But with Vernon and Petunia, I don't really see that. I don't see them being terrible to one another. I think they're a great couple. Now, with that said, I just want to say, I understand that everybody has their own opinions. Obviously, that's why these are opinions. I'm not saying they're 100% solid facts. It's just what I personally believe. So, if any of you have your own opinions, if you disagree with any of my opinions, put it down in the comment section. Put down in the comment section what you want me to talk about in future videos. Just tell me if you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you want to. Other than that, I would just like to say I'm sorry for not uploading this past week. I'm actually having to re-record this whole number 1 section because of explaining this one thing. But my wife and I actually started remodeling a house. So, there might be some spots where I have to go, a week here and there without making a video. Hopefully it doesn't happen too often. But that's why there wasn't a video last week. We were just so covered up. And I actually had everything ready to go, except for the game footage, and I did not have time to edit. So, like, I did not have time to sit down and capture any game footage. So I'm sorry about that last week, if there was anybody waiting on it, because I know my top 5 Harry Potter theories video has been my biggest video so far. I actually haven't checked the views in a few days, but, like, I know it was up over 50 the last time I checked, which is awesome. Like, thank you all who watched that video, who might go on to watch this one. And like I said, just leave it down in the comments if you agree, if you disagree, what are your opinions, what are your unpopular opinions. And, yeah, with that said, God bless and have a great day.